this is going to be a 2-year review slash discussion on my 1-ton Chinese Mini Excavator. If you don't like videos with a lot of talking, you're probably not going to want to watch this. My hopes is I can kind of give everybody a general idea of what 2 years of ownership looks like with one of these machines, specifically this one. This here is a early 2024 production model AGT QH12R. Got a tag there on the back of the seat. I bought this in May of 24, so I'm assuming it was probably manufactured and shipped a few months prior to that. So this machine technically isn't 2 years old yet, but I did just conclude my second season, so to speak, of using it. Where I'm from, it's really cold, so we basically can dig from spring to fall, depending on what the winter does. But I did just finish my second summer of using this machine, and I used the crap out of this thing over this last summer of 2025. Unfortunately, something happened with my hour gauge. I think a wire came loose and it hasn't been registering right. So I really don't know how many hours this thing has on it, but I have a lot of seat time in it. And that's why I'm kind of at a point now where I can start to talk about things that I've had to deal with or noticed since buying this a couple years ago. So with that being said, I'm going to go over some of the modifications I've done to this thing, because obviously it's not stock. I'll put up on the screen right now what it looked like when I first got it. But obviously I've removed some sheet metal and changed some things, and I'll go through all that. But before I do that, because everybody's going to ask, I want to answer a few things right away. I paid basically $5,200 for this machine. I traded in a tractor for a credit towards it, and then I threw cash on top, and so technically I didn't actually pay $5,200 in cash, but that was basically what the deal was total. I also bought some extra attachments. I had a $200 delivery fee, and then there's tax. So all in all, I think I'm pretty close to about $6,000 on this machine. And in a way that kind of sucks, because this model and models similar to this, like the H12, there's like the FF12, there's a million different, names of these things, but they're all basically the same model as this one. But I'm seeing all those going for a lot cheaper now. I've even seen them as low as $2,000 where I'm from. So you can find a model like this brand new between $2,000 and $3,000 for the most part. I guess it depends on where you're at in the United States or in Canada or North America or whatever. But so $5,200 for the machine, $200 delivery fee, a couple hundred for attachments and tax. So, and if you're wondering, it was delivered right to my driveway by the auction company I bought it from. I know everybody always wants to know kind of how you would obtain these things, because that's, I think, one of the hardest parts is you either have to get a trailer and you have to drive somewhere and pick it up, or you have to pay a freight company to drop it off, and you have to deal with the freight company, offloading it and taking it to where you need it, and it just gets to be kind of a pain. And then you deal with the the anxiety of spending a bunch of money online buying something from China and not knowing if you're getting scammed or not, or if it's not going to show up for 12 months. And I don't really have the answer for you on where the best place to get these is, but in my case, I just found an auction yard that I trusted the people. I knew who they were honest and reliable, and they happened to buy these in bulk and either sold or auctioned them off, and they were nice enough to deliver it to my driveway for $200. And it was worth every penny. I didn't have to go anywhere to go get this machine. And they started it up and drove it off their trailer right into my driveway, and couldn't get any easier than that. So since everybody was wondering, that's what I paid for it, and that's how I got this machine. Now with that being said, before I kind of get into the issues I've had or my experience with this machine, I want to go over some of the modifications that I've done, because my review would be a lot different had I never modified anything on this unit. To be honest with you, I think this thing would be broken down had I not modified anything. If it were still stock, the way I abused it over the last summer, I think it'd be broken, or at least having some major issues. So my review is kind of skewed a little bit in terms of having a stock machine. But so a lot of the modifications that I've done stem from issues that people commonly have. I was trying to be proactive about fixing things before they failed, because when you have failure on machines like this, getting parts can be kind of a hassle sometimes. So anything that's preventative is a good measure to take with one of these machines. So in no order of importance, I basically started modifying this machine by immediately putting a cushion valve in. I have a video about installing it, and then another video about doing some fine tuning with it, and I explain a lot more about the cushion valve in those videos. But basically the whole cushion valve thing is the swing motors in these machines, when you're swinging left or right, just the way these machines are designed, if you let off your joystick while you're rotating, it can abruptly stop, and the hydraulic fluid can actually snap your swing motor or the gear off your swing motor, or it can break housings, it can damage mounts, it can do all kinds of terrible things. Because if you get a bunch of weight in your bucket and you got the weight of the boom and the dipper and you're rotating, if you stop really fast, it just jars your swing motor, and your swing motor is deep in there, hard to get to, and goes underneath kind of, and it's just, there's a lot there that you have to remove to get to it, and it's just a mess. And that's if you even find a swing motor for your machine and get it delivered and everything. And I assume getting it delivered would take forever and it'd be expensive and everything. So the way to kind of solve that is by putting a cushion valve in. Now, I'm not a hydraulics guy, but a cushion valve is basically like a pressure bypass that allows hydraulic pressure to kind of rotate. And then when it drops below a certain PSI, then it doesn't have to bypass anymore. And it kind of just brings your machine to a nice slow stop when it's rotating. And it's a lot easier on your swing motor. In my opinion, it's the #1 modification that you need to do to these machines. I didn't want to do anything to this until I got my cushion valve in there and had it adjusted properly. That was a huge thing of paranoia for me, because if you can't rotate one of these machines, the whole thing's useless. So that's #1 in my book. I do have affiliate links for that in a lot of my videos. I can throw one in this video. I don't care if you get the cushion valve using my link, or if you get a cushion valve kit from Central Digger Supply, the Garage Connection channel on YouTube. I don't care where you get the cushion valve. I just really want everyone to make sure you get one and put it in there and adjust it properly, because it makes it such an easier piece of equipment. It just gives you peace of mind to run this thing. So that's all I gotta say about that. I do have videos on that you should check out if you kind of want some more info about the cushion valve deal. But next to the cushion valve problem, the next big problem people have is the hydraulic oil getting too hot. So a lot of people, they're putting 12-volt fans in, they're getting the cooler and running new hoses, and just kind of getting a whole cooling setup installed to help cool both their engines and their hydraulic systems down, because it gets very, very hot underneath the seat in this little bay area right here. As you can see, I don't have a cooler on mine, and I don't have any fans on mine. So my machine got hot. Some people talk about their machines getting so hot that you could practically cook an omelet on top of the rear part of the machine. Mine was never so hot that I couldn't sit on the seat or had issues with the gas boiling over or anything, but it did get hot. And so I kind of figured, if I just removed all this sheet metal, I kind of thought the air would cool it good enough on its own. And before spending the money on the cooler and the fans and everything, that's what I did. And I'm glad I tried this out, because my machine does not get hot anymore at all. It does not get hot. And I do have a little digital temp reader here And in the summer, you know, if it's a 90-degree day and I run this thing for 4 hours straight, I will turn this on and I'll read the temps and everything and point it at the pump and the hoses and the engine itself, the exhaust, the seat, the sheet metal. I'll just point it all over the place, and it never gets that hot. It cools really, really well when it's all wide open like this. I know some people might think that it's kind of ugly having it open like that, but for me, I care more about performance than I do how it looks. So in my case, having this wide open doesn't bother me at all, and it's actually really nice because if you need to work on anything, it's opened up. It just breathes so well. If you don't think that it would make a huge difference removing the sheet metal, just sit inside of a car in the middle of the summer with the windows up and then open the windows after 5 minutes, and you'll feel that relief of the colder, cooler air coming in, because when you trap heat in one spot, it's just downhill from there. So if you open that up and you allow the wind, or even if it isn't windy, just allowing the heat to escape out the side and rise, it just helps it cool so much more than having it enclosed. This here is the orange piece of sheet metal that used to be on the back here. I still have all my sheet metal pieces. It did look nice, but I care a lot more about this thing running cool than I do about how it looks. So part of that design too was that I made my own rollover protective structure, which was another issue a lot of people had. It's not like a performance issue, but they make these machines where the top of the roof is just high enough that it usually doesn't fit under most garage doors. And that's really annoying to me because I really don't like leaving any of my equipment outside. It's not a huge deal, but when you keep things inside and you keep the snow off of it and the critters out of it and the sun off of it, so it's just easier on things to have it inside. And the roof was so tall I couldn't fit it in anything. In my old house I couldn't get through my garage here it wouldn't fit. I have a shed at another place that it wouldn't fit in. So that's kind of why I made my own custom rollover protective structure, but also from a safety standpoint, not just wanting to lower the roof to get it under garage doors. From a safety standpoint, the 4-post canopy that was on here did nothing as far as safety goes. And I took it off, and so in a lot of my videos you can see I have nothing on here. It's just wide open, and people always talk about if you flip it or tip it or whatever, and they're all right. That is dangerous, but the 4-post canopy that was on this thing when I first got it was useless. If you tipped it over, it'd probably bend the bars enough that you could probably still get hurt. My design right here, even though it's only 2 posts instead of 4, I use 2x2 square tubing. I forget what gauge this is. I could have went a little bit heavier with the width of that steel, but it's still strong enough that I guarantee if I put this thing on its side, it would not continue to roll. It would probably do its job properly. So, and it is pretty strong. I made a little frame under there and just used a stock roof. A couple braces here to support this. A couple braces here right in the middle. This is actually where the bars used to go. It was directly in the middle of these 4 bolts right here. Kind of went down. I have this heavy plate that I bolted right through this really thick plate that's at the bottom of this machine, and I put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 bolts on this plate, and then 3 bolts holding the frame here to this plate. So I could have done it differently. I probably could have made it a little nicer. I kind of regret not making this wider, but it is what it is. I'm happy with it, and I actually designed this to address another problem at the same time, which is counterweight. These machines can lift up a lot more than they probably should, and you're kind of only limited by your counterweight. Now I see people, you know, making 500-pound concrete counterweights, and I'm not an engineer or anything, but in my mind, I wouldn't want to do that. I think it's kind of overkill. Having just a little bit extra weight on the back, I think would go a long way in helping being able to lift a little bit heavier things without having any tipping issues, in conjunction with using your blade as a kind of a stability tool as well. But anyway, I left the whole back of this rollover protective structure kind of open to future modifications. I actually took some old hardware and some square tubing, and I filled all these. I got to weld them really good and grind them and make them look nice and everything, but I weighed each one of these. They're about 20 to 25 pounds a piece. They vary. They're just full of little square nuts and everything. Instead of scrapping it, I just wanted to use it as weight. And you know, it's easy to handle because it's not terribly heavy, but you put all these together, it's, you know, you can have 100 pounds or 200 pounds of extra weight. And I want to kind of modify these so then I can add or remove them on the back of this machine, as well as use them on the back of some of my garden tractors. And that's a future thing I'm going to do. But you're kind of killing two birds with one stone here by having your own custom rollover protective structure that you can also mount counterweights to. And actually this plate and even the steel of this thing adds a little bit of weight to the back. And honestly, I've had no complaints about counterweight issues really with this machine. But in the future though, I will be doing kind of a custom counterweight thing back here. Now I do have over there, I have my 8-inch trenching bucket, and then there is a ripper somewhere. But anyway, I kind of had an idea where you could use your extra attachments, and if I could somehow mount them on the back here without obstructing the exhaust and the ability for the engine to kind of dissipate heat. If you had your extra attachments on the back, you'd have your attachments with your unit, and it could also act as a counterweight. So that's something I might look into doing at some point. But yeah, so in addition to kind of what I was talking about earlier with dissipating heat, as you can see, I made a custom floor on this thing, and there's two reasons I did that. The number one reason that I did this floor though is for being a little bit more comfortable when you're operating it. So when the stock floor was on here, there used to be two bars that went down basically right next to the valves here, and the bars came up and you had nowhere to put your feet, so you're kind of crammed in there. It was really uncomfortable. I'm about 6 foot tall, and you couldn't really stretch your feet out, so you were kind of just hunched in there and kind of crouching a little bit, trying to keep your knees from hitting the controls, and it wasn't comfortable at all, and it was really bothering me. And so I wanted to make a custom floor that had some footrests on it so I could stretch my feet out, and I could also use my legs as a brace, so then if I was lifting something heavy and tipping forward, I could use my legs to brace my body up. That way I didn't fall over my controls onto the boom. Believe it or not, there's a ton of videos of people doing that, which there's ways to make sure you don't do that, such as a seat belt, which I haven't done yet and I need to. But even aside from that, you know, if you use the machine right, you shouldn't be getting thrown over your controls anyways, but you know, accidents happen. But with this design here, it helps a lot as far as stabilizing. Pretty easy design. I used some leftover like angled steel, some square tubing, some of this, I don't know, lattice, I guess you could call metal lattice that's kind of for tread. And I had a bolt fall out, so this is kind of loose, but it's a 3-piece system. The side pieces come off, and then the middle piece comes off. And a lot of people right away were like, you're gonna get mud through that lattice, and it's gonna collect underneath of there, and it's gonna be really messy. And everybody who said that was absolutely right. So I do get a lot of debris that falls through this floor and kind of gets all over my hoses and my cushion valve and the battery and the hydraulic tank. And it's not the end of the world though. I kind of just blow it out with compressed air, and it's, you know, it's whatever. But the nice thing about having this floor the way it is, all wide open like that, is for one, I'm always paranoid about my cushion valve leaking, because anytime I crack a hose open and change something, I always feel like I didn't get it tight enough, or maybe it's leaking, or you know, whatever. So being able to see through this floor while you're running it is really nice, because if you have a leak you can pretty much catch it. And then in addition to seeing everything underneath of there, it also provides another level of cooling, having this all open. Because obviously it's open from all the way back here all the way through there. It's all wide open. I know it's kind of dark and hard to see, but it just kind of all works together in unison to help cool this thing. And I'm telling you, I've never had a problem with this thing getting too hot. In fact, I ran this thing for like 4 or 5 hours one day. You're probably not going to believe me, but I shut it off and I stepped off of it. It probably wasn't off for more than a minute, and I was able to put my hand on this pump, and it was hot, but it wasn't scorching my hand. It wasn't like a thing where you immediately, I held on to it for a few seconds before it was hot enough that it was uncomfortable, and I didn't want to, you know, actually burn myself. But that's how cool this thing runs, just by allowing air to flow around it easier. And honestly, I mean, if this is all closed up and you're just holding heat in there, I really don't think a fan and a you know, little cooling reservoir or whatever would even make, I'm sure it makes a difference, but it just seems like it's counterproductive to hold the heat in there and try to get the heat out when you could just open it up and let it, you know. That's just my opinion. But for the time being, I have no plans to get any fans or anything for this, at least not yet. But so yep, cushion valve or swing motor issue, heating issue, the rollover protective structure being too tall, counterweight issue, went through all that stuff, the comfortability. Also, in addition to my custom floor here, one thing I did want to point out is when I first got this machine, I was a little disappointed that I was getting a model that had the controls in front. I really wanted one that had the pilot controls, and I thought for sure, because I have a bad back, I thought for sure I would be uncomfortable using these controls because they're in front of you, and you I thought I would be hunching over to grab those controls. And kind of based on the way I made the foot supports here, I can slide the seat forward. Once I get on it, I slide the seat forward as far as it'll go, and I can keep my back straight and stick my hands out, and these controls are very easy to run, and it's not uncomfortable at all. And I'm actually pretty surprised at how comfortable these controls are when you kind of make your own footrest and you slide your seat forward, so you're not hunched over. I really have no problems with it at all. And if you're just a homeowner, you just want one of these machines for residential use, and you're not using it that much, getting one with pilot controls isn't really that necessary, because with pilot controls you're just adding more hoses in your whole hydraulic system, instead of just having these controls directly over your directional control valve, I think DCV is what you call it, but your controls are directly on that. Whereas if you had pilot controls, you know, you'd have to have hoses running to that, and it's just an extra step. And that, having pilot controls, I think also changes the way you install your cushion valve. I might be wrong there, I don't know, but yeah, that was kind of another thing too with the floor, is that it made it a lot more comfortable running this thing. So another problem that these machines have, and I actually I didn't even really think about it until I kind of started seeing some people talking about it, but apparently where your drive motors are here on your undercarriage, you can actually have the mounts here that your motors are connected to, you can actually have these bend. And people are losing their tracks because these bend inward, and you know, obviously when you bend metal, it kind of just gets weak from there, and even if you bend it back, it's still, you know, it's something you don't want to have it bend. And I don't know what really causes that, if it's the way people that treat their machines or the terrain they're on or what, or if it's just actually a manufacturing issue, like a fault that they had while they were making these. I have no idea. But the kind of a good fix for that is you can get these little plates that are usually, you know, cut in a plasma cutting machine, and they have holes drilled in them, and you can bolt them straight onto your drive motors here, and then just put square tubing in between based on whatever the width of your machine is, and you can kind of customize it to however you want it. In my case, I put a little hitch receiver here, and braced it with some gussets here. I have not really pulled anything with it yet. I just kind of did that for fun. But if I wanted to pull around like a little trailer or something like that, to kind of put dirt in or rock or whatever, I could. Another nice thing too about putting this support on here is that if you add some D-rings on there, or even just have a, you know, a clevis or something right here, it gives you a good solid place to put chains when you're transporting this on a equipment trailer. So that is another modification that I did, and that is kind of like the other things I've done. It's a kind of a preventative deal. So once that's on there, you really don't have to worry about your undercarriage bending. So I think that's pretty much it for the big modifications I've done. Some of the other things that I've done that weren't really a performance or a preventative measure is I did add a hydraulic thumb. I did do a quick attach coupler on there. And my opinion as far as those go is, for one, my thumb, I don't know what I did to this thumb when I hooked it up, but I cannot get the air bled out of these hoses for some reason. And so as I use my machine, my thumb doesn't stay in the retracted position. It slowly falls. And so while I'm digging, I have to repeatedly hit my auxiliary lever to make sure this thumb goes back up and stays out of the way while I'm digging. It's really annoying, and I'm actually getting so sick of it that I've considered taking that off temporarily. I really don't use the thumb that much. I have a few videos where I lifting up some small logs from cutting up some trees, and more than anything, I was kind of just testing the thumb out and trying to get more seat time. And I had some comments, you know, because I was picking up really tiny logs, and everybody's like, "That's ridiculous, you know, pick up a log that small, and you could just pick it up by hand and whatever." And I was really just practicing with it more than anything. But I kind of decided that even when it comes to large logs, I really don't care to use this machine to move around logs. I see a lot of people doing that, and that's great if you need to use it for that. I have a diesel tractor with a loader on it that will lift and move logs 1,000 times better than this machine will. So the hydraulic thumb for the time being is really not that needed for my use at the time. But it is nice to have if you're ever doing some sort of demolition, or, you know, picking up concrete or something, breaking concrete up and removing the chunks, and you can use the thumb to help remove that stuff. And that, I understand that, and that'd be useful. But for the most part, I have kind of changed my uses for this to pretty much just be for digging, because that's what it is. It's what it's meant for, and that's kind of what it's supposed to do. The best is to dig, and I love digging with this thing. It's amazing. You can move a ton of material with this. So in my opinion, I might take the thumb off and leave it off for a while. I really should get those diverter valves, or at least shut off valves, so I can shut off the hydraulic to this attachment. Maybe put some quick attach couplers on there, so I can kind of remove this thing. Or even if I remove the pressure out of the hoses, I could probably stick this back up and like chain it to the dipper, the boom, or whatever. But yeah, it falls down. It's really annoying, and I don't know if that's just an error in the line or what. But yeah. As far as this quick attach goes, I kind of jumped the gun on that. This thing's incredibly dirty, really greasy, but this quick attach isn't as cool as I thought it would be. Mostly because I really don't change the attachments that much. If for some reason I do change the bucket to something else, it really doesn't take that long just to take the normal pins out and change the attachment. So it's, I don't know. The one thing I did notice is if this quick attach isn't on there and you have the bucket on there, this thumb is so long that it kind of doesn't line up with the bucket really well when you're trying to squeeze an object between the thumb and the bucket. So having that quick attach makes the bucket longer, and so these line up a little better, so it picks up things a little easier. And that's really, at the time being, that's the only thing that really that I really like the quick attach for, is just, you know, making the bucket stick out longer because this thumb is so long. I've even considered just cutting this, just cutting a couple inches off of it, because this is a pretty long thumb. But and you could even modify these thumbs to have like more teeth on it and kind of grip things better. In the kit that I got, I had to throw a bunch of washers and spacers and whatnot in there, but it's worked pretty good. Now obviously, you know, you got to grease these machines a lot, but in my opinion, if you use it as hard as I did over the last summer, I don't think any amount of grease is going to keep these pins from getting worn out. It's kind of just the way it is. I know this isn't the best quality steel you can get, especially coming from China. There's a lot of play in this machine, and I know that drives a lot of people crazy, but in my case, these things are cheap enough, it really doesn't bother me. It still operates, it still does its job. So those are some of the mods that I've done. Now, so as far as things breaking down on this machine or giving me problems, I've had really small things happen here and there. For instance, when you're digging with this thing and you're in some really hard ground and you're just being really hard on it, this thing shakes like crazy, which I imagine is probably hard on the gear down there that rotates. You do got to make sure you grease that periodically, but you do kind of shake the crap out of this machine, and that's why this bolt kind of rattled out of my floor here. And the rattling even will loosen some of the nuts down in here that hold your controls together. So what I noticed over the last summer is, well, last winter I actually took the boots off of these and tightened everything down as far as the directional control valve goes, and everything was tight and everything, you know, was lined up properly. I did notice over the summer that this thing gained a lot of play. So see how much that moves? That's a couple inches, and in that movement there, it's not doing anything. It's not curling or extend, or, you know, pushing the bucket the opposite direction. This is doing nothing, it's just play. Whereas this one doesn't have that much play. This one needs to be tightened up too, actually. That's gotten quite a bit looser, because these never used to move at all. These were so tight that any movement you did would change something hydraulically, but right now there's so much play in these that kind of throws you off a little bit. I noticed towards the end of the summer that I was starting to appear to look like I was doing a bad job at operating this, and I kind of wondered why, and I think that is why, because it wasn't as responsive as it used to be. So I do need to, over this winter, when I kind of go through and do some maintenance items on this, I do need to retighten these. Right away when I got this machine, literally like the day I got it home, or maybe the next day or whatever, I did have to fix the choke and the throttle cables, and that's a pain, I know. I think a lot of people have that problem, but I did it one time and I've never had problems with them since. I even used a like 50-year-old Sears choke cable off of a garden tractor, and that is for the choke on this machine. And then this is the weird locking throttle that came with the machine. I have a little piece of paint on there because the way I did it, it doesn't actually, I don't use the whole rotation of this thing. So right there is full throttle. It should be up here, but it's not. But I kind of like it that way anyway, because I don't have to worry about hitting that with my arm or whatever if this were all the way forward. But yeah, and then like I said, this thing shakes so much that the hour gauge stopped working. Not really sure why, because under here it looks like everything's making contact. I did kind of zip tie the wiring harness and kind of push it out of the way a little bit. So at some point I must have done something, because it's been stuck on 36 hours for a long time, and I know it has way more than that. One thing that's pretty interesting with my case here is that I've never had a track come off, and a lot of people have nothing but problems with their tracks coming off. I have adjusted these tracks a couple times, and you know, you ask 10 different people how to adjust the tracks on these, you're going to get 10 different answers. The manual for this machine is practically useless. You know, there's ways that you can do this to make sure that your tracks, you know, don't get worn out too fast, or that they don't come off. But to be honest with you, the way I kind of deal with that is I never rotate this thing in a stopped position. I don't just, you know, start hitting the levers and rotating the whole machine using the tracks while you're stopped. I go forward, turn a little bit, I go forward more, turn a little bit more. I do really kind of weird turns where I just turn a little bit at a time. I'll back up and turn a little bit at the same time. I don't just rotate in one spot. I know if you get a professional machine like a Bobcat or, you know, a Kubota or whatever, and it's brand new and you paid 40 grand for it, yeah, you should be able to rotate in a stopped position using just your tracks. These machines are so cheaply made and engineered and everything that it doesn't surprise me that people have their tracks coming off when they're doing that. So I'm very, very, very easy on this machine when I'm turning. I take really wide, long turns, and honestly, it doesn't cost you any time. It's just something you got to do. It's just, I've never had a track come off, and that's why. So you can either, you know, adjust these and, you know, use them hard, or you can just be really easy on them and kind of never have a problem, and that's what I do. So I never changed out the grease fittings on this. A lot of people change these out, but I will say the reason they put these in there and they're recessed in there a little bit is because if you're moving logs around or brush or trees or whatever, you do have stuff whacking the top of your boom here, your cylinder and the arm. There's quite a few times I've had like a tree branch or something hit something up here, and that's kind of why they put these on there. And that's kind of smart of them over in China to do that. That way you don't have a grease fitting that gets snapped off on a piece of debris or whatever. So I never change these out. It's just a couple dollars for the adapter, the little needle adapter that you push down in there. So I never change those. I know people do that religiously. I don't know why, but something I just never did. I do have a video where I used my auxiliary line here to test my main pressure valve on this machine, and I did confirm my machine was set at 2600 psi, so I never had to change it. But I did get a dial, or a gauge I mean, that I just stuck on here and turned the machine on and basically idled it up, and I moved the auxiliary lever forward, putting pressure on this gauge, and I confirmed it 3 different times that it was 2600 psi. This is my drawer here of my hydraulic stuff. This is my gauge there. I had to get special DIN light fittings to get this to work with my auxiliary hose, but This goes up to 5,000 psi, and my machine was right at 2,600, which is perfect. A lot of people, if you have issues digging or having the power to dig, your machine could accidentally be at 2,000 when it should be at 2,600. So in that case, you'd have to adjust your main pressure valve, which I don't know how to do. So even though I was happy that my machine was at 2,600, if it wasn't, then I would have had to have fixed it, and then I would know what to do. So even now, I should probably still look into that and know how to change that and know how that works, just in case. I do plan on getting another one of these machines here in the near future, just because that's how I roll. I don't need another one, but when it comes to operating this thing, I know a lot of people have problems with the jerky hydraulics. It's like you see it everywhere, online, on videos, in the comment sections, on blogs, just everywhere. People are always talking about these machines being jerky. In my opinion, when I first started running this machine, I thought that it was really jerky, and it kind of freaked me out a little bit. And then I ended up spending hundreds of dollars buying these adjustable pressure. Where did I put those things at? Oh. So I spent hundreds on these Summit adjustable pressure valves here. These are 3/8 NPT ones. I got 3 of them. I was going to install these on every circuit of this machine that was jerky. And the reason I never put these on is after like 15 hours or so, I realized that the machine wasn't jerky. I just sucked at operating it. And the better I got, I just didn't feel the need to put these on. But in the instance that you do have a really, really jerky machine, which is kind of why I want to get another machine, because I kind of use this as a control. And if I get another machine and then have a different machine that actually is like really bad, really jerky, then I could just say it could depend on the machine. Because every machine that comes out of China is probably different. You never know if someone installed something wrong, or if there is a defect with the pump, or the way they installed it, or cross-threaded stuff, or whatever. I mean, there's a million things that can cause these machines to not operate. Even the way that the directional control valve was manufactured could cause it to be jerky or not. So I kind of want another machine just to test that theory out. But in my opinion, at least on this machine, I was not good at operating it, and that's why this thing was really jerky. But now I think the controls are really smooth. If it was jerky, and even if you were good at operating it, and it was still pretty bad, and it was like, you know, riding a bull, you can get these adjustable pressure valves, and you can put them on whatever circuit you want. The problem with that, though, is when you restrict the flow of hydraulic fluid, it can heat the hydraulic fluid faster. So if you have heat problems, which I don't, but it could potentially make your fluid get hotter, and I kind of didn't want to deal with that. And then, to be honest with you, I just didn't want to have to put these on. I don't know, I guess I was just being lazy. I kind of didn't want to have to deal with these things being all over this machine. The absolute worst circuit on this machine, hydraulic wise, is the auxiliary lever. This thumb opens and closes so fast, and you can do it slowly. You just have to be really easy with your hand. And it's kind of, you know, if your blood pressure's up, or it's hot and you're mad and you're dehydrated and whatever, and you're, you know, not wanting to be careful, or, you know, have some finesse with something, and you're slamming this lever forward and back, that thumb will open and close like crazy. It smacks into this. There's a mark there, you can see it smacks into that cylinder. Or this thing will snap right down into the bucket really hard. This thumb will cut branches in half. That's how much power it has. And depending on if you curl your bucket or not while your thumb is extended out, you can actually even bend your cylinder for your hydraulic thumb. So yeah, that's the only circuit I have problems with. But as far as the boom and the dipper and the bucket curl, the drive system is not bad at all. The little blade on here goes up and down pretty fast, but same thing, if you just do it real easy, it's not, you know, it's not out of control or anything. One thing I did want to point out when it comes to these adjustable pressure valves and cushion valves, I get a lot of comments of people thinking they need to put cushion valves on each circuit of the hydraulic system, and that's not what the cushion valve is for. The cushion valve is a pressure bypass for the swing motor. That's the only circuit that cushion valve should be on, is a swing motor. If you're trying to slow down anything else, you have to use an adjustable pressure valve. If you try to use a cushion valve or a pressure bypass or a dual acting relief valve or whatever, what you're going to have is, like, if you had a cushion valve hooked up to your thumb, when you try to clamp down on a log, depending on how you had it adjusted, it wouldn't be able to hold the log against the bucket because it would bypass pressure, if that makes any sense. And you know, even having a cushion valve hooked up to your swing motor, if you're on a hill and it's adjusted really light, so it bypasses easy. If you're on a hill, you can actually have this thing rotate, you know, depending on which way gravity is pulling the machine, and that's really dangerous. So you got to be really careful with those cushion valves and the swing motors and being on, you know, hills and whatnot. Yeah, if somebody even tried to hook up a cushion valve to their drive system, that would be catastrophic. You'd take off down a hill and wouldn't be able to stop unless you know, stuck the bucket in the ground or the blade or something. But so just bear that in mind. Cushion valve is for the swing motor system only, and then adjustable pressure valves for everything else. But like I said, I'm not using these because I got used to this machine. I got better operating it. I actually, before my levers kind of got out of whack, I was able to move a lot of dirt really fast with this thing. It's like every other piece of equipment you run, it becomes second nature, and it's not so hard to run it anymore, which is crazy because the first time I dug with this machine, it's painful for me to even watch the video because I'm so slow and I'm so terrible with the controls. But that's, you know, that's for everybody. If you've never ran one of these before, there's a learning curve that everybody has to deal with. You know, it takes time to get good at things, so don't, you know, take your time, get as much seat time as you want, and get the controls down and have a good machine that you can get a lot of stuff done with. So no judgment here on my channel. I will have a video here in the future about a lot of the things that you see here in this drawer. I did buy some tools that were kind of specific to this machine, some metric hex wrenches here, some crow's foot tools here. I have a lot of fittings and adapters and whatnot, and the DIN light hydraulic stuff that's used on these machines, really has no place in a review video, but I will have a video in the future kind of talking about the fittings that you see on these machines. It would be nice to convert these machines over to like JIC, NPT, whatever, just kind of American standard hydraulic stuff, because it's cheaper, it's easier to get, especially at farm stores and whatnot. So the metric cold DIN light thing is kind of a pain. But anyway, that'll be a different video. So let's see what else. I know there's some other stuff here I should mention. It's probably hard to see. I don't think you're going to be able to see that. See that thing that kind of looks like it's rusty or has some surface rust on it, and it looks like it has a little square taken out of it? That is a piece of metal that I custom made to keep whatever that part is from rotating. Now I do have a video where I show that kind of up close when the floor was off on here, but that is something that I did to kind of prevent whatever that thing was from spinning. So I don't really have a lot of information about what that thing is or why I did that, but that is something I did do. Some other small things that I kind of have problems with this. You know, like I said earlier, the choke and the throttle are pretty junky. My hour gauge stopped working. The little light that they give you on these things doesn't really do a whole lot. It's kind of whatever. The ignition switch, if you don't tighten it down really good, it likes to rotate on you. So if you turn your key, it could actually rotate the whole assembly so you think your battery's dead, but it's only because you're not actually turning over your ignition switch. You're just rotating the whole thing. So kind of got to watch out for that. These drive levers here like to kind of come loose while you're running it. And so usually when I'm using this, I'll always twist these clockwise to try to tighten them back up. You don't want to have one of these fall off on you and roll away. The cup slash phone holder right here, which is, I'm assuming that's what this slot is for a phone. It's both too small for most cans and most phones, so that's pretty much useless. This little shut off kind of master kill switch here for the electric system is great. Other than if you leave it in the on position, your hour gauge will continue to move, which obviously mine isn't working, so it doesn't. So I can leave this on the on position and it doesn't, my hour gauge won't go up. That's because there's a loose wire or something there. But it is nice that this is on there, kind of a safety thing. You know, it kills the power to some of the electric here, kind of prevent shorts, or, you know, for whatever reason, if you hit something with a tool, I don't know. But I did have to put some little rubber things over the terminals on my battery because I was worried about my custom floor here touching both of the terminals and arcing and creating a circuit there. So that's obviously something you don't want. I did have these stickers kind of fall off on me, which that's not like a make or break thing, you know, it's whatever. They're just stickers. I knew right away the sticker that was on the boom and the arrows that were on the by the tracks, which is funny. It just tells you which way is forward, but obviously you know what way that is because of the blade. But I removed the little arrow stickers and then the AGT industrial sticker. It's actually over here on my wall. AGT industrial. I pulled those off, so I don't really have any stickers on this machine. Right away when you get these machines, you need to change out the hydraulic fluid. There's a whole variety of reasons for that, from the fluid itself being not even actual hydraulic fluid, but being some weird mineral food grade crap that they have to put in these machines for the boat ride across the ocean, in case it sunk or whatever. Just EPA environmental stuff. So right away when you get these machines, you got to change the hydraulic oil, put good quality oil in. I did that, and at the time when I did that, I should have stuck a magnet inside of this little tank. I did check the inside of this hydraulic tank. I actually took all these little bolt slash screws out using a hex wrench, and I was able to look inside of the reservoir there, and I stuck a magnet in there, and I really didn't get much for shavings, which is good. That means I don't have a lot of shavings going through the hydraulic system. But a lot of people put magnets in there to kind of grab all those shavings so it doesn't get circulated through your system. That's something I'm probably going to do here this winter when I'm doing some maintenance items on this machine. Which when I do that, I'll show that. There is a gasket or a seal here. You can take this whole thing off of there, and you do have access to the inside of the tank. And there is kind of like a screen type deal here, so when you do add hydraulic oil, it filters kind of as you pour hydraulic oil in. And then there's also another filter inside of there that people say that it's not actually like a very fine micron filter. Like they say you should still add the filter kit to these things on the low pressure side. I haven't done that yet, obviously. I don't know if I'm going to do that yet. I'm sure it probably wouldn't be a bad idea, but I have some pretty clean hydraulic oil in this thing, and I don't seem to have any issues with shavings or anything, so I guess I'm not too worried about that at this time. But maybe something I'll consider here in the future is putting a external changeable filter on this thing. One thing I do want to do, and I'll have this in another video, but I wouldn't mind putting a temperature gauge sensor inside of that tank, and then having, you know, down here like a a little digital gauge that says what the hydraulic oil temperature is, just because I'm curious what the oil itself actually is. I can point my little temp gun back here anywhere and kind of get a basic reading, but I'm really curious of what the actual temp of the hydraulic oil is, because at certain temperatures hydraulic oil starts to break down and degrade, and that's when you start having issues with seals and everything in your cylinders. So I do have a lot of videos running this thing, kind of doing different jobs with it. It digs excellent. This is the bucket that came with it. I believe it's a 16-inch. It's got some teeth on there. It digs in hard ground really well. I have sold a few of the attachments that I had for this machine just because I didn't use them. But I also have a ripper that is somewhere. I kind of forgot what I did with it. I also have an 8-inch trenching bucket, which is right there. That has 2 teeth on it, and that does an excellent job digging narrow trenches. Got this, and then I also have a rake and a ripper. And I actually have not used the ripper or the rake yet, and that is something I need to do here in the future. As far as performance goes out of this machine, I have a lot of videos kind of showcasing its abilities to dig and move things and pick things up. It does an excellent job pushing debris and dirt and everything. It's a pretty good little blade there, and this machine is heavy enough and has enough traction that this little blade here will actually tear up some dirt off the ground. So you can actually cut ground with this thing using that blade. Its lifting abilities, I honestly don't have the actual numbers of how much you can lift and how far out. That all depends on the system itself, your counterweight, and there's a lot that goes into the numbers for what it can lift and what it can't. But I will say it digs really well, and you can get pretty deep with it. I think I've gotten at least 5 foot deep. You do kind of max it out though. When you get deep enough, you just can't go any farther. So as far as trenches go, you can only go so far. If you're digging a large hole, you can actually drive your machine down in the hole and then keep digging lower, just 5 feet at a time or whatever. So I also did try some attachments in some other videos, attachments that I actually don't have anymore. There's a sifting bucket and just some buckets that had no teeth on it, and those are good for kind of scraping surface material off, moving sand, rock, stuff like that. So yeah, it digs well. It operates as it's intended to do. So I have no complaints there. As far as power goes on this machine, you get power from 2 things: from the size of the engine and from the pump itself. I've had a lot of people tell me to put a diesel in this, and I really don't see why that would be a good idea, because part of what makes this machine so special and so affordable and so cheap and so easy to maintain is the fact that it has a single cylinder gas engine on it. So this here is a Rado engine, but it's practically the same as, say, a Predator engine from Harbor Freight. This one's 420 cc. They have it rated at 15 horsepower. Different companies say different horsepower ratings, even if it's the same cubic centimeter of displacement. So it could be considered 13 horse, 14 horse, 15, 16. Rado just happens to call it 15 horsepower. But if for some reason the connecting rod blew a hole in the side of this block and just cascaded out of this thing and it was complete toast, it would only cost me a little less than $400 to go get a brand new 420 cc Predator engine from Harbor Freight, and everything would bolt back in pretty much the same. And I actually already have a 420 cc Predator here in my K646, and it works great. It's an awesome engine. So in my opinion, I wouldn't want to put a diesel in this, because then you have problems with cold starting it, and they're more expensive to fix, and you have to deal with diesel fuel, and it's just a whole bunch of other stuff you got to deal with. I have no power issues with this gas engine at all. This pump too, I'm not even really sure what the specs are on that pump, but it runs the whole system just fine. If it were a stacked pump, if it was a 2 or 3 stage, or a 2 or 3 stacked on top of each other, you could use more controls at the same time, Because on this unit, if you're moving the machine, moving the tracks, and then trying to rotate, and then trying to move the boom or the dipper, it's not going to do all those functions at the same time, which isn't a huge deal. But this pump though by itself offers plenty of power for this thing to dig and lift and move and push and everything. So I always kind of in the back of my mind wondered what a different pump would do as far as performance on this machine. And that's something I might consider doing someday, is putting a different pump on there just kind of to test it out. But as far as the engine goes, these gas engines have plenty of power and they're cheap, and that's why they're awesome. So I have no desire to put a little diesel engine in there. So, and that's just my opinion. You can do whatever you want, but yeah, that's kind of what makes these special, is this cheap little engine. The whole machine itself too is not too terribly loud. I don't even run it on full throttle. Most of the time I'm usually about half or 3/4 throttle, so it's not too loud. But if you're digging for 4 or 5 hours, it'll make your ears ring. So I have a set of ear muffs right there on the wall that I use either in my shop or I'll keep them with this machine. I actually stuff the ear muffs right through this right here, and they just kind of hang. But it is nice to wear those when you're operating it, just so you don't get a headache like I do. But it's really not overly loud. I think a diesel would probably be a little more annoying than this gas engine that's on there. But it's not bad. One of my past videos, I did have the cover off of this thing, and the whole directional control valve was all wide open, and I tightened down a bunch of things to make sure everything's tight. It's kind of along with changing the hydraulic oil in these machines right after you get them, you got to check every nut and bolt on this whole thing, because it's amazing the amount of things that are still loose. And they put these things together so fast that, they're bound to forget something. So it's kind of something you got to do right away, especially with these hydraulic fittings. I think every one of these I was able to tighten a little bit more. Same thing with some of these hoses here. They were all kind of bunched up. I had to use some zip ties to kind of keep these from rubbing on the side of this frame here. You can see right there I have some wires exposed from this hose right here sliding up and down on this mount that kind of holds these still. I noticed that when I brought this thing back to my shop here for winter storage, and yeah, that's not good there. I've never had to change any of these hoses, but I imagine it's probably kind of a pain to run it down in there, and you got to take the whole floor apart to get access to everything. And that's kind of why I like my floor design. I can take this out really fast, whereas the stock floor that was in there, it's kind of a process. So I guess that's another plus to kind of making your own floor. But yeah, and like I said earlier, a lot of these, there's a lot of play in these pins and bushings and everything. I over grease this machine quite a bit, and when you do that, you get dust and sand and debris and stuff gets stuck on your grease, and then you have sand that's like wearing on the metal, and it's just, I don't know, you're gonna have play after a while. I really can't be too picky on a machine this cheap. I always mention in my videos that I had a John Deere 17G mini excavator on order, and it was pre-COVID, and it was $29,500, and my down payment on that machine was more than I paid for this, which I never got the John Deere, thankfully. But I have a machine that's similar in size, and this thing digs pretty well, so I can deal with loose pins and issues here and there. It's not a big deal to me, so they're highly affordable. As far as the engine goes, I did immediately change the engine oil, and I use engine oil that has zinc in it. I ran it for a few hours, changed it again. I checked for flakes, didn't really have much. I ran the second oil for maybe 5 or 10 hours, and then I changed it again. So I've changed the oil in this thing twice, and now the oil that's in it is good. I'll leave it in there for quite a few hours now. But you got to change the fluids in these things right away. Check every bolt, check track tension, and it's just a lot of things here that you got to do. So my opinion on these machines is you see a lot of people that kind of get overly paranoid online about things they need to do, how to do things, what tools are needed, where to find parts. Honestly, if you don't have a good collection of tools and you don't at least have some kind of basic understanding of some mechanic related stuff, it's a little bit scary buying one of these machines, because if you have anything break down, which it's going to happen eventually, or anything that needs to be modified or changed, if you can't really do that yourself, you're kind of in a bad spot. And being that these machines are so kind of unorthodox as they are, it's not like there's a dedicated dealership somewhere where somebody knows how to work on these things. If you go buy a Kubota or a Caterpillar or a John Deere or whatever, they have dealerships and they have technicians that are trained to fix those machines. There's really nobody that's trained to fix these cheap Chinese mini excavators, so you kind of have to do it yourself. And if you don't have a bunch of tools in a shop and at least some basic understanding, or at least the courage to tear something apart knowing you may not get it back together, if you don't have that ability, then it's kind of, I really don't recommend having one of these machines. And the same thing goes for the stand-on skid steers and, you know, some of the other cheaper Chinese equipment that you can get. So definitely have to wrench on your own stuff. And it never hurts to have a welder and be able to cut metal and you know, get a good grease gun and you know, have some basic hand tools and battery charger and this and that, and you know, there's more involved in these machines than just getting the machine itself and having it dropped in your driveway. So there's a lot of other money and tools and time and fluids and grease, and there's costs there. So but pretty much in my instance, I mostly just use it for residential stuff. I know a lot of people are buying these machines and then they're planning on doing commercial work with it, and in my opinion, that's kind of outside the scope of what these were originally meant for. And like I said earlier in the video, how this particular model, the AGT QH12R, is starting to get phased out. This is one of the most basic models you can have, and they're already making machines that, you know, they're coming with coolers on them and updated parts and updated valves and pumps and pilot controls and better cabs and more creature comforts. And I bought this for the residential use type thing, so only at home. As far as using these professionally though, that's a whole other you know, that's a whole other game you're playing there. But my channel, my videos, everything you see about this machine and future machines is all residential stuff. I do help other people do projects, and sometimes I film it, sometimes I don't. But you got to have kind of a realistic idea of what you're buying these machines for, and that's just my opinion. So you kind of have to be a gambler to get one of these. You could literally buy one of these, get it home, and you could have 2 hours of runtime and then have something major fail on these machines. And it could render the whole thing, you know, almost useless depending on what fails. I've seen some of these booms actually cracking, having the welds break and the boom be broken, breaking swing motors, structural problems with your drive motors. Obviously, if you have a drive motor go out, or the mount that the drive motor connects to, if that bends, breaks, whatever, if you can't rotate this machine, you can't drive it forward or backward, or your boom's broken, it's useless. The whole thing's useless. So a lot of gambling going on here. So you kind of got to think about that when getting one of these machines. In my case, since I did a lot of preventative things right away and have been, I don't want to say I've been easy on this machine, but I've been careful with it and not, you know, like earlier talking about the way that I turn the machine using the tracks. I do it very slowly, incrementally, instead of just violently trying to get it to rotate using the tracks only. That's why I haven't thrown a track, because I'm really easy on it. I try to be that way when I'm digging with it. It's not always that easy, especially if you catch a tree root or a rock or something, you know. You can be pretty hard on these machines. But something to think about. These machines do an excellent job with the blade. I actually kind of have this little thing in my head that if I get one of these, if this machine broke down catastrophically, I would love to use the undercarriage to make a miniature bulldozer. Basically removing the whole part that swivels and just leaving the undercarriage with the drive motors, the hoses, and then the blade there, and then building on top of that frame, you know, putting a little engine and a pump and a little tiny directional control valve that controls the blade going up and down, and then the drive functions. I think that would be so cool. And so I don't want my machine to break down, but if anything ever happened to it, you bet I'm gonna have a video about making a bulldozer out of this thing. But I'm hoping that it holds out for me and it works for a good long time. Like I said, I do want to get another one of these. I would have no problem at all buying one of these for 2,500 bucks. So that's a gamble that's worth it to me. There's a few models that I've seen that I would actually really like to get and kind of compare to this one, you know, just for the purpose of science and all that. But yeah, they're just fun to play with. You know, it's a lot better than using a shovel. I don't care what anyone says about, you know, being able to dig faster by hand or this or that. I really don't care. It's fun to use these things. So if you see a video of mine and I'm picking up a little twig with the thumb on this thing, it's because I'm having a good time, not because I'm, you know, on the clock working for anybody or whatever. So I like miniature machinery that does, you know, it's fun to work on and customize and modify and all that good stuff. So I know I have left out something important in this video as far as, you know, reviewing it or discussing my experience with it. I'm sure I forgot something, but in the future, anything that I missed in this video, I'll probably have future videos on it. If anybody is new to my channel right now or kind of seeing my channel for the first time, I have a lot of videos digging with this machine, working on this machine, you know, all sorts of different things. I'm going to have some future videos kind of discussing hydraulics in general, not just specific to these mini excavators, but, you know, hydraulic systems on other things like loaders, dozer blades, cranes, dump trailers, dump boxes, stuff like that. So this machine here has kind of opened up my eyes to hydraulics. And you know, aside from my diesel tractor and this machine, I also have, you know, my K646 with the loader. I had a John Deere with a hydraulic plow on it. I have another case with a hydraulic plow on it. I'm currently making a couple dump trailers that I'll probably start to work on again this winter, maybe early spring. But I'm gonna have a lot of videos coming up on these machines and other projects. So if you're just finding my channel, I definitely subscribe. I'm gonna have tons of stuff to see. So, but if anyone has any questions or anything, you know, feel free to ask. You can also email me any ideas for future videos, or if you need anything explained to you, I'll do my best that I can. I always like to mention the Garage Connection channel on YouTube, also known as Central Digger Supply. Cam, awesome guy. He has more knowledge than anybody. I highly recommend talking to him. He'll be able to answer your questions better than I ever could when it gets down to the technical side of this stuff. But yeah, definitely check that out. I have some affiliate links that I can post in the description if you're kind of looking to buy anything related to this machine. But anyway, I hope this video wasn't too boring. If you made it through the whole thing, I really appreciate it. I hope I kind of gave everybody a decent idea of what this model machine is like. If anybody has any questions or anything, feel free to reach out. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. And thank you so much for watching.